California Governor Gavin Newsom was once being floated as a potential replacement for President Biden. He was all over the country rallying for Biden, especially during the last couple of weeks of his presidency, or rather his run for the presidency. Now, a month after Vice President Kamala Harris took the reins, Newsom has slipped into the shadows. He's hardly been seen campaigning for Harris and the Democratic ticket, and he was also barely seen at last week's Democratic National Convention. As Politico points out, he was one of the few major statewide California officials to not speak on the main DNC stage. And there's been no mention as to what role on Harris's team Newsom would have should she be elected. A Newsom spokesperson insisted the governor was fully supporting Harris, telling Politico, quote, "He is totally focused the next 70 days on electing VP Harris, defeating Trump once and for all, and going to the mat for her campaign." But Newsom has suggested Harris may not need him as much, saying last week, quote, "At the end of the day, it will be swing states that will be determinative, and if I can fill a void that others can't, then I'll be there." I think that's reasonable just to say, I'm in California, Kamala's going to win California, she's from California, it's not a competitive state. I don't know how much help I would be elsewhere around the country. But at the same time, I think there's evidence that Gavin Newsom is not super thrilled with how this rapid primary process really played out. In fact, he was at the Democratic National Convention. He did not speak on the main stage, as mentioned, but instead he was sort of trolling around the Media Row area. In fact, I saw him walk by several times while I was doing Newsmax hits in there. And he did an interview with Pod Save America where he gave a very biting remark about the supposed lack of democracy that the Democratic Party was embracing by pushing Harris to the top of the ticket. He said, quote, "We went through a very open process, a very inclusive process. It was bottom up. I don't know if you know that. That's what I've been told to say." And then sarcastically called the event a 30-minute convention. So maybe this is a little bit of sour grapes by not being seriously considered to replace Joe Biden. Maybe he doesn't like Kamala Harris very much, or maybe he has legitimate questions about how the Democratic Party went through the process of pushing out Biden and deciding on Kamala. But needless to say, it doesn't sound like he's super thrilled about the concept of being a surrogate for the campaign.
Yeah, I think that there's a chance he becomes a cabinet secretary in the Harris administration. That's why he's trying so hard. It's one big audition. The Attorney General of California is likely to make a run for the governorship. And also Javier Becerra is rumored to be making a run for the governorship in California. It's going to be a crowded race of Democrats there. I can see Gavin Newsom totally being tapped for some cabinet secretary position because, for crying out loud, Gina Raimondo was. What Gina Raimondo knows about commerce, if you ever lived in Rhode Island, you hear about the 38 Studios fiasco. And in the 2010s, there was this video game developer, 38 Studios. They were given a $75 million loan from the government of Rhode Island. Now, within 2 years, they declared bankruptcy. Within 1 year of moving their headquarters to Providence, Rhode Island, they declared bankruptcy. There was a known risk with giving this loan. And so Gina Raimondo being tapped for a cabinet position at the highest level with a demonstrated inability to regulate commerce in the United States or inspire good economic activity through public-private partnerships, I would not be surprised if Gavin Newsom, who has focused primarily on the profits and making the state of California good for the very wealthy there, that he would be tapped for a cabinet position. I am so sick of people with a demonstrated inability to create a good economy for working people being tapped to serve at the highest level. So I can see Gina Raimondo going off and doing something else, maybe making a run for Congress while Gavin Newsom replaces her, and the cabinet position is all of these neoliberals that make the left terribly angry after she runs as a progressive. It would be another, Obama administration in that respect, or even another Biden administration. He also ran as a progressive. There wasn't as much hope as we had in 2008 with Obama, but I just really wouldn't be surprised if this is how things go.
It was pretty hilarious. I think it was a week or two ago when Gina Raimondo was asked about the Bureau of Labor Statistics revising down the number of jobs created by 800,000. And she said in response that she didn't believe it because she doesn't believe anything Trump says. And when it was pointed out to her that this was from the Bureau of Labor, she said, I'm not familiar with that, which is sort of her whole job. So that was a really good sign. But I would say if Gavin Newsom is auditioning for a cabinet official position, then you would think he would be out on the trail more, that he would be speaking more on Kamala Harris's behalf. And he's been noticeably quiet. I mean, again, even in this DNC interview, talking about how frustrated he was with the process and sort of sarcastically talking about this bottom-up moment of pushing Kamala Harris to the top. I don't think those types of comments are going to win him any favors with the Kamala Harris administration. My best guess is that he's banking on two scenarios. He's banking on either one, Kamala Harris wins, she has a disastrous administration, he can swoop in 2028 and be sort of the Democratic savior, or she loses and he can be once again a vital Trump opponent for the Democratic Party and again is being pushed to the top by 2028. Because you don't want to be someone who served in an administration that hasn't done great things. I mean, think about what's happened to Pete Buttigieg, right? He was considered one of these rising stars in the Democratic Party when he was the mayor of South Bend, running for the Democratic primary, and then he joins the Biden administration as transportation secretary, and he really bungles the response to the East Palestine disaster with the train derailment. He has basically been reduced to being a spokesperson on LGBT issues instead of actually talking about the department that he's tasked with overseeing, and he has really fallen off in some respects because of that. So if I were Gavin Newsom, I might not want to serve in a Kamala Harris administration if I don't think she's going to do a great job, and I imagine that he has some insight on that, having served with her in California.
Yeah, I think Pete Buttigieg's legacy is going to be one that comes in years later because starting the infrastructure projects across the country, Pete was key in negotiating that all of the labor done is good union labor. And so when I visited Brightline West over in Nevada when they broke ground, Pete was there. And I asked the workers, what does it mean to you that this, project is a public-private partnership? It's, the first high-speed rail in America. That's a big deal. What the workers said is, we are grateful that we have a steady, good paying job for many years. Job security and a good paying job where they can keep food on the table for their families and a roof over their head is what they care about. And because Pete has been the facilitator of one of the largest pieces of legislation to come out of the administration with the infrastructure bill. It's a lot of public spending. We have a bridge being built just 2 blocks from where I am right now, thanks to this bill. And so I think Pete right now is always asked about being a gay man in interviews and is not asked nearly enough about the work that he is doing as transportation secretary, finally reining in some of the predatory practices of airlines as well. That's worth noting. But I really think this big thing, the infrastructure improvements across the country, he's going to get known for that a little bit later. And it's good that he's a part of the most successful part of this administration. To go from mayor to transportation secretary is a big leap. And I think not a lot of people had faith it would go anywhere. But I think, as someone who competed with him in southwestern Iowa some years ago for votes, I didn't like him then, but he's grown on me a little bit because our infrastructure was crumbling and it was necessary. So it's good that they keep pointing to stuff like that. I do think having Gavin Newsom on the campaign trail is a bit of a liability. I think especially in the swing states, because people like someone who's more similar to Tim Walz, saying the government's there to give us good schools, to ensure the economy is running in a good way, and to build roads. We just build roads and build schools. That is the kind of message that lands with working class people in Appalachia, in the South, and in Middle America. Gavin Newsom's brand of politics is useful to make sure they keep their base in New York and California.
That's going to do it for us this week on Rising. As always, Jess, it was great being with you today.
It was good being back with you and matching again.
Be sure to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss any content. And for those of you who like to listen while on the go, we are now available anywhere you listen to podcasts.
Bye, y'all.